Yeah,
Nice to see you.
great, great.
Do
Okay, all right. So we got Ariella, everybody. Um, and she's a very multifaceted personality. Got a PhD in doing a PhD in medicine. A Vida Dow fellow. If I am correct.
So I'm a contributor at VitaDAO, which is
Mm,
a little bit different than a fellow. A fellow is a specific program we set up for people who want to apply for a small amount of funding,
mm,
such as like students who want to go to an aging conference or something of that sort. And whereas contributors do various things for the DAO. So something that I've worked a lot on is science writing and illustration and editing work. Um, but today, I think I'm here to talk about a new organization that I started, Web3, Women in Science. Before that, should I give a quick introduction about my background?
yeah, you could probably give a much better one than I will. So go
Sure.
for it.
Yeah, so my name is Ariella. By day, I'm an MD PhD candidate at Washington University School of Medicine. And what that means is I really sold my soul for at least 8 years to do a combined medical program and scientific research PhD program. So while I'm here, it's a very long time to wait to get into, the business and industry world. And when I heard about VitaDAO, that was my first introduction to Web3, and it seemed like a very interesting opportunity to step up my side hustle game and try to see more of what's out there outside of academia. And so that was maybe 9 months ago that I was recruited to VitaDAO. And after that, I really fell down the rabbit hole. The second organization I joined was actually Surge Women, which is an organization that wants to recruit and support women in Web3. And I found it was really, really wonderful to be part of a community like that, a support community. And it made things a lot easier when I had questions about crypto or just wanted the support of a friendly community that was there for the explicit purpose of helping new people, especially underrepresented groups. And so after seeing the organizations in the Web3 and science space, also known as DeSci for decentralized science, after falling deeper down the rabbit hole, joining a few, I noticed that in this space, as opposed to in the academic bubble I've been in, like in medical school, there's definitely not a 50-50 ratio of men and women. There, for a lot of marginalized groups, they're very underrepresented. So it's not just women, but of course, people of color, LGBTQ folks, people with disabilities and chronic illnesses. I think that Web3 is amazing in opening up a lot of opportunities, but I think it might be lagging behind a little bit on initiatives that traditionally rely on legal infrastructure and guidelines like HR departments and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and guidelines. And I'm not sure, we still have a lot, we're still so early, and there's a lot of things that need to be done. But after being part of these DeSci organizations and organizations like Surge Women that were trying to tackle this issue in Web3 in general, I thought that I could sort of combine these two principles and try to help my little sector of Web3, which is in the science and medical sector, get more diverse. And so that's why I started Web3 Women in Science. It's named so that it's impossible to mistake what the organization is for. I'm a very literal person. So, like the name suggests, it's for women in science and also allies of women in science who want to support us to come together and make connections, learn about the Web3 world, help each other join organizations, as well as hopefully incubate and start our own organizations. And there are a lot of plans for the future. I think, right now we are really just starting out. We only officially opened our Discord to the public a couple weeks ago and launched our website, but we have a very strong leadership team now of about 10 people plus a few moderators in the Discord. And we're trying to evaluate the best legal framework and business model for the organization, and power through despite the sudden drastic downturn of the crypto market and all of the sort of contraction of the communities that we've seen. But I'm personally quite hopeful that this contraction of the markets will weed out a lot of the noise that we've been seeing, and that when we get through to the other side, there will be organizations left like ours that have a strong mission, and aren't just relying on a hype model, and that in the long run, it'll be for the best. Although in the short term, it is a little bit difficult to start a new business in this environment. So we appreciate your support in helping to promote our movement. Was that a good introduction? Do you have further questions?
That was an amazing introduction, I would say. Very detailed. Thank you for that. And it seems like the organization is very, very new.
Yes.
And it's interesting to know, although maybe we could talk about it a little bit later if you have to present something about the project, about how it is to actually build in this specific time when the market is down, where funding is very difficult to have, when a lot of people are very pessimistic.
Yeah, so
yeah.
there's definitely some pivoting that we've done. I think when we were first conceptualizing this community, a few months ago, this was sort of peak NFT hype time. And we were thinking that an NFT as membership to this community would be an excellent model to get funding off the ground. And that would be a great way to onboard people with also cool art, as well as all the benefits of being part of the community. I think that we are still planning on doing that in the future, but like I said, we're having some discussions about alternative business models for starting out, especially grant funding, and looking into a legal structure so that we might be able to accept donations as a nonprofit entity. So these are all talks that we're having now, partially inspired by the new market dynamics. But I think, like I mentioned before, one of the reasons, or I'm not sure if I did, but I think one of the reasons I was originally recruited to Vita DAO is because I have a specific skill set of science writing and illustration. And so I love the creative aspects of the NFT space and the art. And I really do intend to follow through on the NFT at some point, but I want to do it in a smart way. And I think that right now is probably not the right time. And I think that also looking at what Surge has done, they spent many months building their community and putting out really helpful resources and building a strong following and user base before launching the NFT. And I think that that's proven to be a more sustainable model and a more sensible model than these other communities that maybe try to put out an NFT at launch. And then there's not that same trust. And especially in the current markets where trust is so low, I don't think that's a good model for us. So we are focusing on building our community, building functionality in Discord that doesn't require a lot of financial investment, creating easy structured pathways for people to introduce themselves, make connections, share relevant events, use joint calendars, become liaisons for their organizations, especially in the decentralized science space. And in that way form this looser pipeline where women can come in, have this one sort of portal, and then be able to talk to liaisons for these other organizations without joining 20 Discord servers and trying to find their way. Where the idea is within our server, you will be able to talk to people representing these different organizations, and directly ask questions, and then sort of have a buddy already there for you when you go and you maybe do eventually join their Discord server, or join their next community call or something like that. And then we'll also be standing by for support, because one thing that I've noticed, not just in the Web3 space, but also as a grad student, is when you're coming into something new and vulnerable and you only have your, what we say in science, N of 1 experience, or basically like you've only been yourself once. You haven't gone and entered grad school 10 times before, or entered Web3 10 times before. So it's very hard to know what's normal, what's not normal, and what to do. So I think it's really important to have these support communities so that you can go to someone and be like, hey, this thing happened to me and it seems a little bit weird, but maybe it's normal in this space. Like, can I talk about my experience here and then get some advice? And I think that for me, that would have been extraordinarily helpful if I had had that coming in. And so I'm trying to just draw from my experience and others' experiences to create that network, that support system, so that people can get into this and in a safe way. Because Web3 can be so unsafe with all of the scammers. So they can be safe. And also, if anybody does end up being victimized, either by scammers or, in the case of marginalized groups, discrimination or harassment, that there will be a support system of people that have a basis in this space already, to be there for them and offer advice. For now, advice is cheap, but in the future, I think, financial and legal support, that's sort of the long-term vision for this, is to really be a one-stop shop for all of your support needs as a marginalized group in Web3, and then eventually become not marginalized is the hope.
Yeah, it's pretty refreshing to hear this, actually, creating this social net. Because DAOs and blockchain communities have this now, would say, obsolete ideology in terms of trustlessness, which has informed the designs of the organizational design in DAO so far. And it seems like we're entering a new design philosophy now, where we have seen the mistakes of the past. And I would say that you're entering in this weird period, but you have all the amassed knowledge and wisdom of previous organizations. The failings, all the lessons learned. So there's also that.
Yes.
And I think this is something that everybody who's trying to start an organization right now should also hear. That we got a lot of knowledge that you can draw from.
Yes,
and...
I mean, no one does it right the first time. It's perfectly natural for the first iteration of something to have issues. That's part of the growth process. And, it's really important to have these hubs where people can compare past experiences and issues and learn from them. Otherwise, as you were saying, you have people come up and, repeating the same mistakes of the past with little opportunity to learn. And I think trustless, these sort of buzzwords in the blockchain space, trustless culture and a non-culture, I think that it's an interesting new frontier, but I don't think it completely solves the issues. Certain things are trustless, of course. If you can read a smart contract and you know exactly what it says and you have that training, then sure, you don't have to trust anybody because you can read it plainly. But a lot of people that doesn't really work. And I'm one of them. That I cannot read the smart contract. I need to trust somebody else to have read it and told me it's safe. Trust whether it's OpenSea. I have to trust that whatever they've set up is probably fine, or whether I'm joining a new organization and they've set up a special site where their own website where you can mint their NFT. I can't read that. I just have to have, been in the community and make sure that it's like a friend of a friend and that I've achieved a certain trust level. So I don't think we've achieved trustless. And in terms of just a non-culture, which is sort of the other big buzzword that you'll hear, I've had people say that due to the potentially anonymous nature of Web3, that diversity, equity, and inclusion aren't issues. And I think we should really all know by now that that's just not true. First of all, we don't even need to debate theory to just go in and look in practice. If you've ever been to a crypto conference or watched one online, I mean, it is a sea of white male faces. So it's really unarguable, though people will still try to argue it. And the people ask, well, why is that? You can just be anonymous. You can be anybody. I mean, it just doesn't really work that way in practice. For one thing, in terms of getting recruited in the first place, that's all a network effect. And when you have people setting it up, that especially in the initial Web3 era, in the DeFi era, that it's mostly these tech bro networks and finance bro networks, that those are going to be the people who are OGs and they go to their friends, and then you have a culture of all the power is centered on these networks. And then the more philosophical issue that I take with the anon culture is, I don't think the best way to achieve diversity, equity, and inclusion is to make marginalized groups invisible by, just trusting that you can interact with your profile picture as an ice cream cone and a pseudonym. That's true, but I think that it's okay to want to express yourself, including all of your identities, and still be accepted. And I don't think the only way that women and people of color should be able to thrive is by making their identities invisible and letting people assume they're probably a white man. And of course, it doesn't even really work, because once you get to a certain stage, you end up having meetings like this, and then you can plainly see, who I am. And we should never create a space where people are afraid to have a Zoom meeting, because it will be revealed that they're from a marginalized culture. But yes, sorry. I don't know if we still have any more time, but if we do, I'm happy to answer any other questions. And if we don't, then thanks for having me.
Yeah, we do have time, and I don't know if you have time.
I
do. Because we also have a panel afterwards.
Right.
So there's plenty of time in that, so
Great.
that we can keep on expanding this conversation.
Sounds good.
So
Yeah, I mean, I'm
I
here
hope
for the
you'll be there.
panel.
I don't know if you. Sorry, I didn't.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess the connection was delayed.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm here. So if you have another question,
right.
shoot.
All right. So yeah, more like a commentary, because I don't see any questions in the chat right now. But yeah, trustlessness and anonymity have a time and place, and should not be used in any circumstance or for whatever reason in this space of Web3, especially not for building a community. I mean, this is the part where, I mean, anonymity can exist, and we have a lot of anonymous people in a metagame too. But yeah, there's this issue that there's stuff that is hidden. It has to do with an identity, that has to do with marginalization that should not be hidden at that point, because if you also see the people that are in this conference, you also see like a very disproportionate amount of white males from maybe English-speaking countries. So
Yes.
it is not about just talking about these issues. It's about just accepting that we have a problem, like and talking about it openly. And it's very nice to see that there's initiatives like yours that are trying to open up this discussion and have this uh, building this aspect of a network also, because of the way you um, described it, as having all these people from all these various places in Web3, which sounds like I don't know if you have designed it as a sort of delegate system, uh, something like that, but for a community. But yes, it sounds like uh, these networks of discourse and action are opening up.
Yes.
Uh,
Let me comment on a couple of your comments. You brought up some really good points, most recently about delegation, and I do think that once we get some more trust, then we want to open up more financial avenues. Like I said, the NFT, but not just that. With funding and trust, I hope that we can pursue a sort of Web3 evolution of a union where we can have delegates and meta voting. For example, if we own tokens from certain organizations that are, in the science and Web3 space or mission aligned organizations, then without people having to leave out the safety of our community and go and purchase tokens on their own, we could set it up where being a member of our community gives you the right to participate in so-called meta voting, where you can vote using your NFT of our community as like a one NFT, one vote, and then whatever wins with that vote, the delegate would then go to the original organization, that DeSci organization, with the tokens we have in our community vault and vote for whatever the meta community decided. And so that's definitely in the plans for the future. But like I said, we want to start off with community building, and then after amassing trust and hopefully funds, get there in the future, because that kind of thing requires funds and trust. And the other thing that you commented on was, which I thought was a very good point, which is not only this predominance of white male able-bodied people when you go to conferences, but also that everything has largely been in English. It's like a preponderance of English speakers, and I think that's an excellent point. And I do want to make our community accessible to people who don't speak English. That's definitely also in the roadmap. We have moderators right now who speak Portuguese and Spanish, and I speak Japanese. And one of the things I did for Vida DAO was getting a few of my Japanese colleagues to come in and help me put together a large explainer article about Vida DAO to put out to the Japanese community and create a Japanese language chat in the Vida DAO Discord channel. And I know Serge is doing a lot with Spanish-speaking contributors and making Spanish language Web3 articles as well. And I really hope that we can expand that more in the future. It's hard for me to do personally with languages that I don't speak yet. But I hope that as we amass more people and more moderators that speak these languages, that we can make that a priority. Because I've seen it de-emphasized in a lot of communities. And I don't want to follow that trend. I want to have a section of the Discord where people can have specific language chats. And I also want people to feel like they can respond to comments in their native language, because like in any chat, because honestly, you can just plug it into Google Translate and it might not be perfect. It might sound a little bit silly, but there's no reason why, if someone wants to write a comment in or a question in Chinese on the server, why I can't just copy paste that into Google Translate and respond in English and say, hopefully Google Translate can approximate my response into Chinese and go back and forth that way. I mean, it's definitely been done, and I don't have any opposition to that. So if anyone listening to this, well, I guess you kind of have to speak English to understand what I said. So, but if anyone listening to this knows somebody who wants to participate in the server but is worried about not speaking English, tell them that I do not mind in the slightest if they want to go in and speak their own language or want to initiate a chat specifically for their language. We will definitely welcome that. I think you're muted.
Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, the translation issue, translation work is really important. It's one of the, I think, unique characteristics of Web3 and organizations in Web3. You wouldn't see it in normal corporation, not in the way that you see it here. And it's also a way for people to get into contributing in an organization. It opens up space for work for new people to enter, and it is also spreading this thing around the world, which is, it has been captured for sure by an English-speaking not only language but also mentality. And this, I hope, this translation work will open up the also the cultural differences that exist between people and be more inviting towards them.
And so, I want to say that this English language issue is definitely not Web3 specific. I think we all know that English is dominates a lot of different spaces out there, and specifically if we look at scientific research, which again is my realm. I know from experience, I lived in Japan actually for 4 years, and worked in a Japanese medical center. And in order to get a PhD at that university hospital, you must publish a scientific paper in an English language journal. And everybody knows also that it is possible to publish in other languages. So you do occasionally see things even on PubMed like, oh, this is in Japanese, or this is in another language. They published it in another language journal, but it is everybody knows that if you want to have like a real publication that counts on grants and that will be disseminated worldwide, that you must get it in English. And it's actually a huge barrier to people in countries that don't have a very solid English speaking population. That was actually my job when I lived in Japan, was to write all their papers for them.